Yeah, we can start.
Yeah.
Hello, good morning, everybody. So the topic we are talking about is, I think the topic was written somewhat wrongly in the message you got. But what I teach is graphics using Microsoft Office. And to give you a perspective of what this is about, we all use graphics. We have to make flowcharts. We have to make illustrations for our publications, or maybe a journal article. That may be a journal article, a book chapter, or something like that. We make PowerPoint presentations and we need illustrations for that. We have to manipulate images to use in our PowerPoint presentations. So the idea is that instead of downloading some low quality graphic from the internet, we make our own. And it is fairly easy to do. Apart from the issues of copyright, you can make much higher quality graphics than usually what is downloaded from the internet. This is a life skill. It's not part of the curriculum, but we like to teach it because once you start working with, even as a resident, you need to know how to make basic graphics at the very least for your own needs. And of course, if you publish a lot, then it becomes very important to make more complex illustrations. So that is the background. That's the reason why we teach this. To disclose, I don't have any commercial interest in Microsoft. The software we are using is Microsoft PowerPoint for the most part. We'll do a little bit of work using Microsoft Word. The reason we are using Microsoft is that it is by far the most commonly used Office software. So many of these things might work with Open Office or other Office software, but I'm not sure about it. So when we talk about graphics, Murki, are you able to see the screen clearly?
To see the screen.
Yeah, okay. So when we talk about Office graphics, we often think that we are talking about animations in PowerPoint and things like that. In fact, I'm going to talk very little about animation. I rarely use any animation in my slides. The more important thing and the focus of today's discussion will be about creating illustrations, creating shapes, and manipulating images using PowerPoint, and to some extent using Microsoft Word. It is very helpful if you want to follow along. If you have a mouse, it makes things much easier. Without a mouse, you can still do it, but it is harder because you need to know where the left click is and the right click is on your touchpad on the laptop. And you may need to press one of those buttons while at the same time using some keyboard buttons and dragging with the other hand. So that gets a little complicated. Much easier if you have a mouse. So we'll be using PowerPoint, like I mentioned, for the most part. We will use Microsoft Word very briefly, only for flowcharts, really. You can make flowcharts in PowerPoint also, but Word has an extra feature that makes it much easier to manipulate flowcharts later. PowerPoint, if you're using a Mac, a few features may not work, and sometimes the shortcuts may be a little different. For example, command button instead of control button for some of the features, and I'm not sure of all the shortcuts. I'm using it on Windows, but I think for most of the work that we are doing, the control button on the Mac will work as well as the control button on Windows. If you have an older version of Office, it's mostly okay, but a few features won't work. And I'll try to mention it when possible, and the appearance may also be a little different. If you have Office 2019 or Office 365, of course, everything will work. If you have Office 2016, 2013, I think almost everything will still work. With the 2010 and older versions, maybe a few things won't work. So the way today's discussion is structured, I'll give you a somewhat longish introduction that takes about 15-20 minutes. And that's partly because we come from different backgrounds. Most of us have very little experience with graphics. And of course, the software have so many features that to cover them takes some time. So I just am trying to demonstrate to you what is possible with PowerPoint and Word. And anyway, I think people are joining in late, so 15-20 minutes shouldn't be a big problem. I'll try to finish the introduction in about 20 minutes, and we have the rest of the 2 hours to discuss. I'll do brief demos. I can repeat them when needed, and you can follow along. And if you have questions, we'll have time for questions, and we can troubleshoot some of the problems. Now, I normally do this in a workshop format with around 30, maximum 40 participants, and I can see their screens and troubleshoot more easily. That won't be possible today, but I think we still should be able to sort out major issues. And I'm pretty sure there will always be at least one person in a group who can figure out everything. So you can always ask that person, right? So when we talk about shapes, so you have all inserted shapes using PowerPoint or Word. This is a simple shape. It's a circle. We can add a couple of squiggly lines to it. Now it looks somewhat like a phospholipid molecule. This is very easy to do in both PowerPoint and in Word. You can make many such things, and now it looks like a monolayer of phospholipids or something like that. And you can easily duplicate it, and it looks like a bilayer, now a lipid bilayer maybe. You can add a hand-drawn shape to simulate a receptor. And of course, if you are trying to make a PowerPoint and especially animate it, you can add hand-drawn cytokines and other things that are combining with the receptor here, and maybe a post attachment, some configurational change in the receptor. So I'll repeat that. So you have this lipid bilayer, you can hand draw a receptor, you can draw something like cytokines. You can animate them if you want in PowerPoint and make it look something like this. And you can use something like a morph transition in PowerPoint to make it look like it's changing smoothly. But we won't be covering much of animation. I will show you this particular animation maybe at the end. Flowcharts, we can't escape making flowcharts. There is a saying that in life only death and taxes are certain, but I think it should be death, taxes, and flowcharts. If you're a resident, if you're a consultant, it doesn't matter what you're doing. In the modern world, you can't escape making a flowchart. And flowcharts may be simple, like this one is pretty simple. I think it's from an older version of our protocol book. Or it may be more complicated. This is from the current version of the JIPMER neonatology protocol book. But what do you want in a flowchart? You want, of course, the content is king. It doesn't matter how good looking your flowchart is if the content is bad. So I'm not going to, I can't stress that enough. The content is entirely up to you, and the content should be good. But given the same content, you also want the flowchart to look clean, organized. The content should be easily readable. The font should be consistent. The arrows should connect, right? So you should spend maybe 90% of your time on generating the content and making sure that the content is good. But the remaining 10% of the time that you spend making the flowchart, you should make sure it looks good. So we will talk about flowcharts today. Of course, you can make it colorful. I like to keep it clean and black and white, but you can make it as colorful as you like. And if you're, let's say, making something like a fishbone diagram, of course, it's just a modified flowchart in some ways. You can make that in PowerPoint or Word any way you like. I just made this yesterday during lunchtime, maybe 30-40 minutes to make this. Of course, it doesn't look much like a fish. But if you plan to make it look like a fish, make sure the fish looks a bit sad, because usually you don't do a flowchart when you don't do a fishbone. You don't make a fishbone diagram when things are going right. The other thing, other than flowcharts are a kind of illustration. But the other thing that you do very commonly is make illustrations. This one is a simple illustration that we made in PowerPoint for our hypoglycemia protocol, I believe. But you may need to make more complex illustrations. This one is again from our protocol book, which has just been published. So technically the copyright now belongs to Indian Journal of Pediatrics, although I made it. but I'm using it here. I think it's reasonable use of something that we made. So if you look at this illustration, it's a schematic diagram for CPAP, and it's made of a number of small shapes, all of which can be inserted using PowerPoint or Word. And they are just combined together, they are just grouped together to make it look like a complex illustration. And of course, there are text boxes to label things, but this can be done entirely in PowerPoint or Word. Or you could make more complex illustrations using shapes that don't exist. So this one I made for publication. It's not been published yet, but I think it's going to be published soon. There are a couple of cells here, and an endothelial cell, a smooth muscle cell. So if you look at the endothelial cell, it is not a shape that exists in PowerPoint or in Word. You have to make it yourself. But it is very easy to make a shape like that, either starting with a novel or just drawing it on your own if you have a mouse and a PowerPoint. So everything in this presentation is made in either PowerPoint or Word, other than the photographs. The photographs were taken in my camera, of course. If you have children or you're planning to have children, of course, there is no limit to what teachers make you do. You have to make all sorts of illustrations. I'm not discouraging any residents from having children here, but there is a significant amount of homework involved once you are a parent, and you have to make all these crazy illustrations. Well, whatever the teachers want, right? You can draw dogs. I'm sure not all of you will be drawing dogs, but you might be making something like you might be drawing a liver. You might be drawing something like enterohepatic recirculation of bilirubin. So you may want to draw a liver and intestine. What I'm trying to show here is that you can make fairly complex illustrations using just PowerPoint or Word. Let's explore this dog. I just want to show you that the dog is actually made of a large number of small individual shapes, which are then brought together, right, to make a more complex illustration. So really your imagination is the only limit. You can make very complex illustrations using just PowerPoint and Word. Of course, you can make much better illustrations if you have Adobe Illustrator or maybe to some extent Photoshop, and you are good at it. But why complicate things? For the most part, we need relatively simpler illustrations, and everybody has access to PowerPoint and Word. Pretty much everybody has access to PowerPoint and Word. So why bother to work with more complex software with much steeper learning curves when you can do most of this work using just PowerPoint? Of course, you can make more dogs. I like dogs. Another thing we'll be talking about apart from illustrations is manipulating images. So for the most part, when I show photographs, I'll be showing insect photographs because I do insect photography. But you can use pretty much any photograph. You might be using clinical images in your slides, right? The idea is that straight out of your computer, the image may not look particularly great. The rectangular image doesn't always look great on slides. So you can always crop it to different shapes. In this case, I think this one's cropped to a sun shape. This one is cropped to a circular shape. And this particular slide, you can see, has a custom-made background. That's another thing you can do using PowerPoint and Word, that you can make custom rectangles, custom fills for the rectangles, custom other shapes, and you can make interesting backgrounds for your slides if you want. And of course, you can animate them. In this particular case, apart from cropping it into a circle, a bevel has been added. If you can see a shiny edge along the corner, which makes it look slightly three-dimensional. Along the edge, there is some light reflecting off it. That may not be clear in your slide, but you can see it's animated, it's rotating. But the animation, like I said, is very optional, and I rarely use animation. If you have an image with a relatively clean background, a simple background like this one, in PowerPoint or in Word, it's very easy to remove the background with just one click. And then you can move the image in front of your text. So it looks better very often. But this only works if you have a clean background. One practical use, for example, is when this is a photograph of my signature taken on an ordinary mobile phone. And you might have seen some certificates which are cream colored with a white rectangle around the signature, which happens when you scan something in and it comes with a white background and you try to put it on a background with a different color. So a practical use is that you can easily remove the background and now you have transparent background and you can put it against any colored background and it still looks decent. Of course, you can make custom shapes. Like I said, you can make a liver shape. This one just happens to be a whale. This is a quick one that we can do in a minute or so, and we'll try to make this towards the end. Of course, you can customize it as much as you like. In this case, maybe add eyes, a spout. In this case, I've added, I think, a peacock feather as the background. And of course, you can animate it again. But like I said, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. And I would be very careful with animation. Use it sparingly. So in summary, this is what we learned today to create shapes, to group shapes, to form complex illustrations, and that includes flowcharts. We can edit shapes to make custom shapes. We learn to manipulate images using PowerPoint, especially for your presentations for the slides. So those are the objectives: to create flowcharts, to manipulate photos and images, and finally to create custom high-quality vector graphics. We'll start with flowcharts because it's easy to illustrate many of the principles using flowcharts. And then we'll talk a little bit about manipulating photos and images, but that's not the main focus today. The idea is that by the end, you should be able to create custom high-quality vector graphics. I'll take a few slides to show you what vector graphics are. That's because in the last few workshops we have conducted, I think we must have asked about 150 people by now, and only a couple of people actually knew what vector graphics are. So I'm assuming there are many fellows in the group who don't know what vector graphics are. Just a few words about the interface before we start. You must have seen the ribbon. I mean, all of you have seen the ribbon on PowerPoint and the ribbon on Microsoft Word. The ribbons have tabs on them. This one, currently the selected tab happens to be the Insert tab. These tabs are permanent. And we'll be using this particular command. Under Insert tab, we'll be using Insert Shapes command a lot today. We can also insert pictures. But when you select an image, just a moment. When you select an image, this tab appears on top. If you have selected a picture, the tab is called Picture Format, or if you have an older version of Microsoft Office, it may be just called Format. And it has a lot of commands under it. So like this crop command, for example, there are all sorts of options to arrange the picture on the slide. If you select a shape instead, like let's say a circle or a rectangle, maybe a flowchart as together, this tab appears. It's called Shape Format. Again, in older versions of Office, it may just say Format. And again, you have a lot of options to manipulate the position of the shapes. You can add some quick styles to it. Those are ready-made styles, but you can also make custom styles of your own. And hidden in the left, where Microsoft doesn't want you to see it, are some very powerful commands in both Word and PowerPoint, but we'll cover that in the second half of this talk. So just a few slides about vector graphics, and then we are done with the introduction and we'll start the hands-on work. I think more people have joined in anyway in time for the hands-on stuff. But just to give you an idea about what vector graphics are, how you have to make fairly high quality graphics, especially if you plan to enlarge the graphic, like for a poster, for example. Your poster might be maybe 8 by 6 feet or maybe larger. In that case, you need to have a graphic which looks still okay when you blow it up to a much larger size. So this is the graphic that we saw sometime earlier, a lipid bilayer maybe with a receptor in it. I'm going to take 3 of these molecules, the phospholipid molecules, and blow them up. So you can see they still look sharp, and that's because they are vector graphics. When I say they are vector graphics, if I draw a circle as a shape in PowerPoint, PowerPoint doesn't save it as a photograph. It actually saves the formula for the circle, the mathematical formula. It saves details about what fill color I have used, what is the color of the border, and so on. It just saves that information. So if you want to make it bigger, PowerPoint just redraws it in a much bigger size. So it doesn't matter how big you want to make it. The software can redraw it at that size. So that means the quality is never lost. It's just redrawing it using the stored formulas and making it look bigger and bigger. So it will still be very high quality. On the other hand, if this is a photograph that you have taken from a textbook, or if you have downloaded a photograph from the internet and you try to enlarge it, what happens is that it begins to look a little blurry and pixelated. And you can see the lines look thicker. This is a screenshot I had taken of the same image. I had taken a screenshot and I have tried to magnify it. So what has happened is the image is stretched out and beginning to look blurry and pixelated. And of course, the lines look thicker because along with the rest of the image, the lines are also getting stretched out. I've made it even bigger now, only 2 molecules. And you can see now, you can really see that the image on the right, those are called raster graphics. The screenshot, when stretched out, is beginning to look really pixelated and blurry. Of course, another advantage of vector graphics is that you can very easily change color. You can change the color of the lines. You can change the fill color. Because like I said, these are just mathematical formulae, and it's very easy to change the colors, for example. But with something you have downloaded from the internet or photograph, that's going to be really hard unless you're an expert in Adobe Photoshop or things like that. So we'll go on to some, so that's about vector graphics. So like I said, it's much easier to follow along if you have a mouse with your laptop. We will start with flowcharts because it's easier to demonstrate many of the principles using flowcharts. And then we'll go on to manipulating images and then go on to making more advanced shapes. So if you have the PowerPoint that was shared, the working document, you have, I think this is the second slide on that presentation, showing some of the shortcuts. But if you don't have it, it's still fine, because we are going to stop the presentation at this point. We're going to demonstrate how to do this on a blank slide. So I'm going to hit escape and stop the presentation for now. Do you have any questions, any urgent questions before we go on to the demo? Murki, anybody?
No, Nishad. I think it's crystal clear.
Okay.
One small request for the organizers: can everybody switch off their videos or cameras? That will increase the speed. Otherwise, there'll be. And please, everybody switch off their microphones except for Nishad. You can ask questions, and when you're asking questions, you can turn on your microphone. Nishad, okay?
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on.
Hello.
So I'm yeah.
Nishad.
Can you Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So I think Murki might have lost me for a minute there. Hello, Murki.
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Yeah, okay. So I'm assuming that they're having some temporary problem and I'm going to continue. So are you able to see the slides? The rectangle on it?
Yes, we can see.
Sure.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, okay. So I'm continuing. I'm going to delete this rectangle. This is from the working document that I had shared. It's the third slide. I'm going to delete this rectangle and I'm going to start from scratch. So like I said, if you go to insert and you have a variety of options here, you have options to insert a lot of things here. But what we want to insert is a shape. So I'm going to go to insert shapes. Under shapes, I have many kinds of rectangles. So for the first rectangle I'm going to insert is a rounded rectangle. It says here rectangle with rounded corners. So I'm going to insert it and just draw the rectangle. And you can see it has rounded corners. It also has this colored dot towards the top left corner. What you can do is click and drag on the dot, and what the dot does is it adjusts the roundedness of the rectangle, right? So by tradition, the first shape in a flowchart is an oval, and the last shape is an oval, and you have diamonds for decision points and so on. So this could be the first shape in the flowchart. And of course, if I drag this line all the way to the left, it becomes a regular rectangle. So this shape can be used as both a regular rectangle and a rectangle with rounded corners or an oval. So that is entirely up to you, right? But this kind of handles will be seen in many shapes. I'll show you another example. This is a shape. I'm going to insert what is called a star. There is a 24-point star. I'm going to insert the star here, and I'm going to so you can see again there is a dot here, a colored dot. If I drag on the dot, what you can see is I can change the shape, right? I can change the pointiness, the length of the arms of the star, and maybe this is what I want if I'm making a badge, for example. Maybe I'm making an announcement on my poster that the first prize winner gets a certain amount and so on. So you might want something like this for that. So you'll need to manipulate the shapes using some of these handles if it's available. And of course, you can do a lot more with shapes. For now, we are talking about flowcharts, so I'm going to delete the star now, and I'll stick with the rectangle. But what happens is by default the software might draw something like this with a blue color and I think white font. I'm going to make it a little bigger so people can see it clearly. I'm going to add some text, and I'll probably just say first shape in the flowchart, right? So I have added some text to it. So very often what happens is that you may have excessive margins and part of the text might be getting cut off. If that is the case, you can just right click on the image, on the shape, and select format shape. If you do that, a whole window will open on the side, a whole tab will open on the side where you can manipulate the shape. Of course, you can do it from the ribbon on top also. If I just a moment. If I select the shape here, you can see a tab appearing on top called shape format, or in older versions of Office that just says format. And I can go here and change the shape fill, outline, shape effects, and all that, right? But it's easier to work with this thing on the right side. And if you see here, you have text options also. You have shape options. Under shape options, you have fill and line, effects, and size and properties. So I'm going to click on size and properties and look at the size, the text box. So under text box, you can see that I can adjust the margins of the shape. So if I don't want any margins, I can make the margins 0. That means the text can occupy most of the shape, right? So even if I make the shape small, the text is still able to fit within the shape. So I suggest you do this with the first shape you are making, because what we are going to show next is that you only need to do all this once. and you can just copy the shape and change the shape to make it look like whatever you want. So, I know that sounds a little confusing. So why don't I demonstrate it? So I have made one shape here. Now to duplicate it, there are a couple of shortcuts. One is I can just press Control D. D stands for duplicate. So I can easily duplicate this, right? So Control D again and Control D again, and it keeps on duplicating, right? Control, of course, D stands for duplicate. So Control D is an easy shortcut to remember. But I don't usually use that shortcut. So instead, a better option is to drag the shape while holding down the control button. So if you, I'll repeat that. If you hold down the control button with your left hand and drag the shape with your mouse, you can easily duplicate it, right? Did that work for you? So you press the control button and drag the shape. So while holding down the control button, you drag the shape, you can duplicate it. So I'm going to do Control Z and undo it, and I'm going to do it again. I'm holding down the control button and dragging the shape. So it gets duplicated, right? But when it's duplicated, but it's not really nicely aligned, it looks out of position. But if you want to move something straight, what you can do is hold the Shift button. That's usually just above the control button. Hold down the Shift button and move a shape. If you hold down the Shift button and move a shape, what happens is you can only move it horizontally or vertically. You can only move it along a straight line. You can't move it sideways. So that makes sure, that's a way of making sure that you're moving things along a straight line, right? What this also means is that I can use Control and Shift together. So I'm selecting this shape. I'm going to press both the Control and Shift buttons with my left hand, and I'm dragging the shape with my right hand. So now what this means is I can duplicate the shape and move it along a straight line very easily. Right? I'll give you a moment to think about it. So I'll undo this and I'll do this again. I'm holding down both the Control and Shift buttons and dragging the shape. Right? So now I can duplicate the shape and move it along a straight line. Right? But then I'm stuck with all rounded rectangles, but I only want regular rectangles for these. I can either change these one by one, right? Like this, and then duplicate the regular rectangle, or even simpler, I can select a rectangle, go to shape format, under edit shape, you can change the shape. So maybe I want a regular rectangle, maybe I want it to be a circle. So if I want a circle, I will click on oval, it becomes an oval shape. If I want it to be a regular rectangle, I can go to edit shape, change shape, and regular rectangle, and now it has become a regular rectangle, right? So I can change the shape after I insert it. Maybe this is a decision point. In that case, I click on the shape, I go to shape format, I go to edit shape, change shape, and I'll select diamond. So here is a diamond under basic shapes. So now you can see it has become a diamond, and of course I can resize it. Of course I can resize it. Is it clear? I'll pause for a moment. Murki, is it clear to you?
Where the edit shape is.
Hello.
The edit shape is, where is it? I'm trying to see.
Edit shape. Okay.
Hello?
I'm going to show this. Yeah. Sorry, Murki.
Where is the edit shape?
Yeah. Okay. So if
How
you
did
click on the
get to
shape, yeah. So if you click on the shape, a tab appears on top, on the right end. So along the ribbon.
Yeah.
Can you see something called shape format?
Shape, yeah.
Shape format?
Yes, shape format has come, yes.
Yeah, under that there is, at the left, there is something called edit shape. Is it not there in the Mac?
No, it's not there in the Mac.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem, no problem.
So
no, it's okay. I
no,
got the
that,
point.
that doesn't matter.
Dr. Murthy,
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
Dr. Murthy, go
Yes.
right, just next to the text box, there is change shape, edit points, it says. You can go there. If you
No,
go
edit
there,
points is different.
change
Come to edit
yes,
points
edit.
later.
edit.
Yeah. Don't
Okay.
edit points. Edit points is more advanced. We'll come to that later. But in
Yes,
that, is there a change shape option?
Edit text is there. Edit shape is not there.
Yeah.
On the
Edit,
right
change shape
corner,
is not there.
action settings.
Okay.
No, it's not.
Yeah. So a few shapes, but anyway, you can straight away insert a diamond. It's not a big problem.
Correct.
But the idea is that if you have done a lot of things in the shape, maybe I have made it an orange box. Maybe the font is not Calibri. Maybe it is something else. And maybe I want a bigger font and all that. What I suggest is you make all those changes in the first shape, so that you don't have to do that for each individual shape. And then it's very easy to press Control Shift and duplicate it. So it makes life much easier if you do make all the changes you want in the first shape instead of in each different shape. And I think somebody's microphone is on. I can, anyway, I'll continue. But now I'm still a little worried about this because the shapes don't seem to be perfectly, spaced out. So perfectly spaced. So I'm going to select all of this by drawing a rectangle around it. And I'm going to go to shape format again. And on the right side here, I think you can see my cursor here. On the right side, you have a lot of commands to arrange the shapes. So here I'm going to say align, and I'll distribute vertically. So what it does is it just adjusted the spacing between the shapes so that they are equally spaced, right? So it looks very neat. So I'll do that again. I'm going to do Control Z. So my problem was that the shapes are not equally spaced from each other, and or something like this. What I do is I select all the shapes. I can either draw a rectangle around it, or I can hold down either the Shift button or the Control button and select the shapes I want to align. So right now I'm holding down the Shift button and clicking on one after another. Shift click, all four selected. Now I go to shape format, align, and click distribute vertically. So now everything's perfectly spaced from each other, right? Okay, so I'll give you a moment to catch up. But let's do this in Microsoft Word. Microsoft Word has a feature that PowerPoint doesn't have, and that's called drawing canvas.
Ishad, we lost your microphone.
Yeah, I also have some problems here. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, there is something something seems to be a little stuck. Just a moment here.
Yeah.
Okay, I have some trouble when I open Word, it's not allowing me to share that one. Let me see how that works.
We have opened the Word. Can you tell us the word?
Yeah, so if you open Word and go to insert in the Insert tab, you have the Insert tab on it, just like you have in PowerPoint. And if you click on Shapes under Insert, at the very bottom of Shapes, at the very bottom, so you have something called New Drawing Canvas. This is not there in Mac, sorry.
Okay.
this particular feature is not there in Mac.
Okay,
Most
good.
other things are, but this particular feature is not available in Mac for Office for Mac. What can I say? Bill Gates is poor and he wants you to spend on a Windows laptop. so this drawing canvas, the advantage is that you can put multiple shapes inside it like a flow chart, and when you select it, it basically helps you move everything together when you want to move it. So when you want to copy paste the flowchart somewhere, it's much easier to select the drawing canvas and move it. Right? Is that clear?
But we can also group all this together and move it, no?
Yeah, you can do that from PowerPoint also. You can select everything, but the only advantage of the drawing canvas is you can just right click on the drawing canvas and copy the whole canvas and paste it somewhere.
Okay.
The other advantage of the drawing canvas is if you are making the flowchart inside the drawing canvas, the arrows will stick to the shapes, which won't happen if you are making it in Word but making it outside drawing canvas. But if you are making it in PowerPoint, no problem. In PowerPoint, you don't need the drawing canvas. The arrows will stick to the shapes automatically. Right?
Okay.
So we'll do that next. So I'm going to go to Insert.
Nishad, where is that drawing canvas in?
If you go to Insert,
can you show us where the drawing canvas is?
Yeah, so in Word, if you go to, I'll show it in PowerPoint, but sorry, if you go to Insert Shapes.
Yeah, Word, I am in Word.
Yeah.
In Shapes.
At the end of at the bottom of the shapes, below all the shapes, there is a button called New Drawing Canvas. Did you see that?
No, it doesn't. Equation shapes, flowcharts, stars and planners, callouts. That's the
okay,
last.
which version of Office is this?
I wouldn't know the version, but yes, I was actually trying to.
Is it a Mac or? Yeah. Oh, it's not available on a Mac. That's what I was telling Murki. So that particular feature is not available on a Mac. Hello?
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry about that. So, but it doesn't matter really. You can make it in PowerPoint and you can select it and move it. So now I'm going to add some arrows to the flowchart. So I'll use a straight arrow. Again, even if you're drawing arrows, remember that holding the Shift key will make sure your arrows are either straight. So you can only draw vertically down 45 degrees, 90 degrees, and so on. So if you hold down the Shift button and draw the arrow, I'll make it a little thicker so people can see this arrow. So if you hold down the Shift button and move the arrow, that means you can only draw it in a straight line usually, right? So it won't allow you to draw in other directions. So what I'm going to do is I'll delete this arrow now, or maybe I'll use the same arrow. I'm going to drag this arrow towards the flowchart, and what I can see is that some handles are appearing on the shape. When I'm near the handle, I'll let the arrow go so that the arrow clicks to it. And the same with the other end of the arrow. When I'm moving it near the shape, I can see these shapes, these buttons appearing, these handles appearing. And once I'm near one of those handles, I'm going to let the arrow go. So it clicks to it. So you can see when the arrow was outside, it had some white handles, but once it is connected, it's either green or red. I'm not sure what that color is, but maybe green. So anyway, it's connected. What it means is that when I move the shape, the arrow stays connected to the shape, right? So it may not always be a straight arrow. Let's say I want to duplicate the shape. I'm going to press Shift and Control and going to duplicate the shape. This time I'll insert what is called an elbow arrow. Under lines, you have arrows and you also have what is called an elbow arrow. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click on the first shape, then click on the next shape, making sure I'm clicking on the handles. So now it's connected. I can make it whatever color I want. Maybe I'll make it I just will make it thicker. So the advantage is that if I now press Shift and move the shape, it moves along a straight line and the arrow moves with it. So if I want to insert a third rectangle here, let's say I want to insert another rectangle here, what it means is that I can move it along a straight line. I can duplicate this arrow pressing Ctrl D. I have duplicated the arrow by pressing Ctrl D and connect the arrows the same way, and it will look neatly lined up. Sorry. And they all look neatly lined up. Is that clear? So I'll undo this and do it again so that it's clear to people.
Just the arrows once again, please.
Yeah.
From
so,
insert.
Yeah, I'll do that. So I'm going to duplicate this rectangle first. I'm going to press Ctrl Shift and drag the shape so that it's duplicated. Now I have a second rectangle and I want to connect it using what is called an elbow arrow. So if you go to Insert, you have Shapes, and under Insert Shapes, you have Lines. In Lines, you have what is called an elbow arrow connector. So if you click on the elbow arrow, you go near the shape, you see the handle, you click on it. And the other end, you click on the next shape, which you want to connect to. Make sure you click on one of those handles that are appearing. So the line is now connected. But this line looks thinner because the first line we changed the thickness of the line. So one option is you can go to Shape Outline, Weight, and change the weight of change the thickness of the line. Another option is, let's say you have made many changes to the first arrow. Maybe you have made it orange colored or red colored. Maybe you have changed the thickness. Maybe you have changed it into a dashed arrow. Maybe you have done many things with the first arrow and you want the second arrow also to be like that. So the easy way is click on the first arrow. Click on the first arrow. Go to your Home tab. The Home tab. You have something called a format painter. It looks like a paintbrush. It's usually on the left here where I'm pointing. Click on Format Painter. So what it has done is now it has selected the formatting of the first shape. And if you click on the second arrow, it will apply that same formatting to the second arrow. Right? This doesn't just work for arrows, it works for shapes also. So for example, if I have this first shape and I have changed the shape fill to maybe blue, right? And I have a shape outline which is maybe orange, and I have a very thick outline. For some reason, normally I wouldn't make anything like this. This is just for demo. So I have done all this to that shape. Now I want to copy this formatting. All I do is I click on that shape, go to Home tab, click on the paintbrush, that copies the formatting, and then click on the second shape. Now it has copied the whole formatting to the next shape. You got that, Murki? Is that clear?
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So, yeah. So I hope you have learned at least a few new things by now, but there is more to come. So, so far is everybody okay, more or less?
Step you can repeat again, sir.
Yeah. So let's say I have made many changes to the shape. For instance, in this rectangle, I have made the border thick, I have made the border orange, I have changed the fill color to blue, and I don't want to do that individually to all the shapes, right? So all I do is I click on this shape. Under Home tab, there is an option called Format Painter, which looks like a paintbrush. So I click on Format Painter. So all the formatting is copied now, and you have this brush shaped icon, and you click on the next shape that you want to format. It basically copies all the formatting to the next shape. This is a very useful tool. It's there in Microsoft Word also. So let's say you have made one heading 25 points, 26 point size. You have made it blue. You have made it italics. You have underlined it. All you need to do to copy that formatting to another line is you select the text, go to Format Painter, and click on the line which you want to make a heading, and it will copy all the formatting to that line also. It's very useful in Microsoft Word also. But here I'm demonstrating it in PowerPoint. So I'll give you a moment to do that. So we started about, I think we have finished 45 minutes. We started about 10 minutes late. I think we'll need to catch up a little bit. So I'll move on. I think if at least one person or a few people in the group have figured this out, you can, discuss it with them later in case one or two people haven't still figured this out. But this is a very useful shortcut to, copy formatting. So that's pretty much it about flowchart. The other advantage of using the drawing canvas in Microsoft Word is that inside the canvas, the arrows will stick to shapes. Outside the drawing canvas in Microsoft Word, the arrows will not stick to shapes. These handles on the shapes that you saw, the dots won't appear if you're making in Microsoft Word, but you're making it outside of a drawing canvas, right? So these are, I have actually, I think in the document I have shared, there are some flowcharts. You can play with it and, see how it works. So far we have seen how we can change shape by dragging on the handle, on this handle here. Let me close some of these windows so you can see better. I'll actually zoom in. By the way, you can zoom in using your touchpad or control and scroll button. If I'm holding down the control button and scrolling using the mouse. So this is something we learned today. I can zoom in and out using that shortcut. And we have learned how to duplicate it, how to resize it, how to move it, how to connect arrows. One thing we did not discuss is that if you insert a shape, let's say a circle, I'm inserting a circle and you want it to be a perfect circle, you can again use the shift key. You hold down the shift button and drag a circle, it will be a perfect circle. If I don't hold the shift button, this is what happens. It may change into an oval shape, it may not be a perfect circle. But if I hold down the shift button while drawing, it can only be a perfect circle. This doesn't just work for circles, it works for every shape. Holding down the shift button while dragging, make sure that you are doing it proportionately. So maybe I'm inserting a sun shape, but if I'm doing it while holding down the shift button, it makes sure that I'm expanding it proportionately. If I don't hold the shift button, then it may become compressed or elongated looking if I'm not careful. So holding down the shift button while dragging a shape makes it expand proportionately. Again, this particular shape you see has the handle which you can use to manipulate the shape, right? So this handle on it. So just play with some of the shapes later and see what you can do with them. If you noticed in the CPAP diagram, there was a blender, right? So this particular thing is just a star shape which has been manipulated. I have given it some 3D effects. We'll talk about that later, right? So I'll undo that. So what I'm trying to say is you can manipulate existing shapes in when you're making flowcharts, but also for other work. So far we have learned how to change the roundedness of the rectangle, how to duplicate, how to resize, how to move using control and shift buttons, how to connect arrows in a flowchart. This makes flowcharting very easy and makes it look very neat because you can make sure the arrows are all connected and the shapes are all lined up. I think I showed you how to align the shapes also. So if you click on shapes, and there are these align buttons which you can use to distribute the shapes horizontally or vertically, or you can use them to make sure the shapes are aligned center or left or middle. So you can play with this a little later and see how it works. We'll move on to some image manipulation. We use a lot of image.
Nishad, 1 second. When you're inserting arrows to make the arrow fit to the circle or to the rectangle, you said there are some highlights which will come as soon as you move the arrow onto the rectangles, but many times it's not coming.
Yes. So let me try. Let me show that again. So I'll show you. I'll insert a rectangle here.
Yeah.
And I'll duplicate it. And let's see, connecting an arrow. I'll go to insert shapes, arrow. When I come close to the shape, this thing appears. It doesn't appear for you?
ये Mac का problem है ना?
Mac में नहीं appear हो रहा है?
Mac में भी आ रहा है सर.
आ रहा है?
Mac में भी आ रहा है? हाँ.
नहीं आ रहा है, ठीक है, आ गया. Okay.
And then drag it to the next shape. There also the handles appear, and you let go of it after that. And you know it's connected because now this is a solid color. Both ends of the arrow there is solid color. If it is not connected, it will be a white color. जैसे अभी है ना? It is a white color on both sides of the arrow. If it's not connected, you see a white color. If it's connected, it will be a solid color.
Okay.
That's how you know it's connected, right?
Sure. Okay.
And in a slide like this, even if you want to move things, make sure you hold down the shift button and move it. No, sorry. Make sure you hold the shift button and move it so that it moves in a straight line. Yeah. Something like this, so that they don't get out of alignment. So if I hold down the shift button and move it, it only moves in a straight line, up or down, up also. So if I'm selecting both these shapes I'm holding down the shift and clicking on each shape. So I'm clicking on this particular rectangle, then this particular rectangle. And if I move them, holding down the shift button, what happens is they only move in a straight line. So up or down, so the alignment doesn't change.
Yes.
So it's very useful. So coming to some image effects, we won't spend much time on this, maybe 10-15 minutes. One thing you can do, this is this particular shape is actually a white photograph, so it doesn't look like it has a border. But if I go change the slide color, I'm going to go to design, format background, and change the slide color. I'm going to give it maybe a colored background. Then you can see that this shape actually is a white rectangle. Now the question is whether you want it to be a rectangle or not. If you are happy with it being a rectangle, then no problems. You can just click on the shape, make some other adjustments if you like. If you go to picture format, there are all sorts of options under picture effects. So if you click on the picture, a picture format tab appears on top. You click on the tab, there are all sorts of options under it. Under picture effects, you go to shadow, you can add a drop shadow so that it adds a slight three-dimensional look to it. There is a drop shadow which appears around the shape, and you can select whatever kind of drop shadow you like. In this case, I have selected a drop shadow which appears on the right side and below the shape. So it looks like the light is falling from the left side and top. But that is a simple thing you can do. You can also, I'll remove this shape and I'm going to insert another shape. To insert another picture, you go to insert pictures, and I'm going to pick another picture for the time being. So I've inserted another picture for the time being. And I'll resize it a little. Again, if you hold down the shift button while resizing it, make sure you're enlarging it proportionately, right? I have inserted another shape, but maybe you don't want it to be a rectangle. Maybe you want you would prefer some other shape. So what you do is you click on the shape on the picture, go to picture format. On the right side, there are crop options. You go to crop, and under crop, you have crop to shape. And in this case, I'm going to select maybe an oval. An oval means it's cropped now to a round shape, right? But it doesn't have to be round. You can go to picture format, crop, crop to shape, and use another shape also. Maybe I want it to be a star shape or a sun shape or something else. You can pick pretty much any shape you want, and it should work, right? So something like this, and then you can still go back and add the drop shadow and other things if you like. So if I go to picture format, picture effects, shadow, I can add a drop shadow still if I want. If you don't want a shadow, that's fine. So it's very easy to crop images to the shape you want. But this doesn't destroy the rest of the image. The image is still rectangular. It is still there. You can still get the original image back. So if you go to picture format, on the left side, there is an option to reset the picture. So I think you can see my cursor. If I am going under picture format, on the left side, there is an option to discard all the changes and reset the picture. So if I click on it, it goes back to the original, right? Yeah, somebody's microphone is on, I think, but that's okay. I think we can continue. So under the picture format, there are many ready-made options also. For example, all these are ready-made styles. Under picture format, it says picture styles here. Under that, there are lots of ready-made options. Like this particular option, for example, looks very good. It is a reflected rounded rectangle. So what if I click on it, what happens is it has added a rounded rectangle. It has cropped it to a rounded rectangle and has added a reflection. And again, you see this handle on top here. So that means I can adjust the roundedness by dragging on the handle, right? So that dot you see will help you adjust the roundedness. So I'll leave it at this. This looks fairly decent to me, slightly rounded corners. But then I don't want the reflection. I don't like the reflection. So I can click on the shape, go to picture format. Under picture format, there are picture effects. If you see this, that's where we added the drop shadow. And under reflection, I can just say no reflection. So that means now I have the rounded corners from the ready-made effect, and I have removed the reflection because I didn't like it. So you can start off with a ready-made style, and you can also change it then if you like. You can manipulate it further, right? So that's something you can do to make your images more attractive on your PowerPoint slides. So you can do a lot of other custom things also. Under picture format, on the left, there are all sorts of corrections available. So if you think your image is too bright or too dark, you can brighten it, you can sharpen it, you can change the contrast. I won't spend much time on this, but you can check it out later. And you can also change the color if you like. Under the same tab, under picture format, color, you can change it into black and white or other colors and all that. Or you can have some artistic options also. They're not very artistic, so I wouldn't use it, but it's entirely up to you if you want to use it. So something like this neon effect, I think it's called glow edges. So if you want to do that, that's fine, but you know, I would be careful with those things. Actually, there are 3-dimensional effects that you can add to shapes and images also. We won't spend too much time on it, but this is something, for example, this 3D effect can be done in just PowerPoint. You don't need anything else to do this kind of stuff. So the way it is done is, if you click on any shape, I'm going to delete this 3D image. I'll delete this arrow also. I'm going to duplicate this image. I'll just show you this quickly, just so you know where it is. I don't use this much, but just so you know where it is. So if I go to picture, I have selected the second image now, the duplicate one. I'll go to picture format. Under all this, under this picture styles, you see this arrow here, this small arrow, which helps you expand it into that side tab that I was telling you about. You don't have to do that, or you can right click on the picture and select format picture also. That does the same thing. If you right click on the picture and select format picture, it also opens the new tab. And under this tab, you have all sorts of options. So this here says effects. So you have fill and line, you have effects, you have size and properties, and you have picture adjustments. So I'm going to go to effects. Under effects, I have something called a 3D format, right? So this is where the 3D things come in. So I can choose 3D format and bevel. So top bevel, I can add a ready-made bevel. So it adds some 3-dimensionality. And then under that, there is 3D rotation. But these are more advanced. You don't have to do it. Under 3D dimensions, I can add something like this. I'll start with something ready-made like this, right? So now it adds some 3-dimensionality to it. It doesn't look particularly great. So what I have done is I have added a ready-made 3D rotation to it, and bevel. Under 3D format, I have added a bevel, right? So it looks slightly 3D now. But under bevel, there is an option called depth, which I can change, which makes it look somewhat like a framed painting right now. So I'll change the picture to something brighter. So can you see that now? So it looks somewhat like a framed painting right now, because I have added a bevel and I have added some depth to it. So those options are here, but I suggest that you play with it later instead of now. I can of course reset the image. So this is what the original image looks like. If I go to, I'll do it once again. This is the original image. I'm going to go to 3D format, add a bevel. Then I'm going to go to 3D rotation and pick a ready-made rotation. I'll pick the first one, which says left down. And then I'll go back to the 3D format and change the depth. So here is the depth. The depth adds the 3-dimensionality. I can make it as much as I like, right? That is how it works. But of course, this works for shapes also. So I'm going to insert a shape and a star shape. I'll hold down the shift button and draw a star shape. This same options are available for shapes also. So I'm going to add a bevel to it. Let's say this bevel, and I can change the color of the shape, right? I can add a more complicated bevel also if I like, something like this. Right? Something like this, and I can manipulate the size of the tines here. So this looks 3-dimensional. Now if you go back and look at the CPAP diagram that I showed you, it is also on your slides. Now you know where the blender knob comes from. I'm going to zoom in on this, right? The knob of the blender is exactly this. It's a 3-dimensional shape that was made in PowerPoint. So I have inserted a star, and I have added a bevel, and I have added a drop shadow so that it looks 3-dimensional, right? So like I said, it's only limited by your imagination. You can do a lot more things with this, but you have to spend some time to find out what things can be done with it. So this is a simple effect that I wanted to show you in case you want to do something 3-dimensional. One other thing that I said we'll look at is removing the background. This is very simple. So if you have an image like this with a clean background, all you need to do is click on the image, go to picture format. The leftmost command says remove background. So you click on remove background. It shades in purple whatever you don't want. So in this case, I think it is highlighted correctly. So I'm just going to click keep changes. And the background is gone. Right? The background is now gone. And I can move the shape around without the background. The only problem is my bird is now behind the text and I wanted it in front of the text. So for that I can just right click on it and say bring to front. So now the bird is in front of the text and I can keep it wherever I want, right? So that is very simple, but it doesn't always work very smoothly, especially if you have busy backgrounds. In this case, it works very well because the sky is blue and the cloud is white. So there is a fairly clean background. I'll do this once again. I go to picture format, remove background. But one thing you can see here is if I magnify it, the ends of the cable on which the bird is sitting are colored purple. That means I'm losing it. Now suppose imagine I really want this whole length of the cable to be included. There are two pens here. One says mark areas to keep and one says mark areas to remove. If I click on mark areas to keep and I click on the cable here, I'll draw on the cable here. PowerPoint will intelligently select the cable. Oh, selected too much. So I have to be careful with this. So now both ends of the, now if I click keep changes, both ends of the cable are also kept. Right? Are we okay so far? We have about 45 minutes left. Murki, are we okay?
Perfect.
Yeah. I know it's a bit too much. There is a lot of new information, so sometimes it can be a little.
Nishant. Hello.
Yeah,
Nishant.
I can hear. Yeah.
The only one thing that I missed was 20 minutes. How are you going to get that 20 minutes? Is there any way by which you can repeat that? Not today, maybe tomorrow, day after tomorrow. Recorded thing, something. First 20 minutes.
Ashish,
The first 20.
there is a recording. There is
Of
a
course,
recording.
there is a recording. I think. Yeah.
Okay,
and
great.
of course, you can always travel to Philadelphia.
Okay. I'm going to be there for the poster, but I hope I will be there at your session. I'm coming for the poster.
So, right.
Now,
So I think it's recorded.
And I had to rush to the hospital, and I just joined at 7:25. So that's the reason I missed that first 20 minutes. Looking quite good.
Right. I think Murki will share it, right, Murki, the recording?
Great. Thanks.
You should be able to share the recording.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So let's move on because we have a fair amount of ground to cover now.
Yeah.
Now we'll move on to more advanced things. So more advanced means we are manipulating shapes now. So we just saw how to insert shapes, how to make sure the shapes are enlarged proportionately and so on. And now let's see, I'm going to delete everything on this slide, sorry. I'm going to delete everything on this slide so we can start from scratch. This slide is in your, in the document that we have shared already. So you can keep the shapes if you want and just start a new slide, or you can do it in the same slide. I'm going to start from scratch. So I'm going to do insert shapes. I'm going to insert a circle. So I hold down the shift button, make sure the circle is correctly done. Maybe I'll insert a star also. I'm going to shapes. I'll insert a star. I'm going to go with the 32-point star this time. Again, I'm holding down shift so that the star looks okay, proportionate. I'm going to manipulate the arms of the star a little bit. This should be okay, right? I'll change the color of the star. I'm going to go to shape format, shape fill, I'm going to give it a brighter color, gold color maybe. Now what I'm going to do is so now if I move the circle, because I inserted the circle first, it is behind the star. I want the circle on top of the star. So I can right click on the circle and say bring to front so that the circle is in front. And I'll put the circle in front of the star. So don't worry if it's not perfectly aligned at this point. I'll adjust the size of the circle to approximately fit the star. Now they look approximately, comparable size. One is on top of the other. Like we said earlier, to select multiple shapes, you can hold down either the control button or the shift button. Sorry, somebody's microphone is on, I think. Could you switch it off, please? Yeah. So you can press either the control button or the shift button and select the multiple shapes. So I'm going to select both these shapes now, holding down the control button. I have selected both the shapes. Now you go to shape format. You have the align options. I'm going to do align center. That means they will both come to the same center of each other, not the center of the slide, the center of each other. And then I'll go to align again and say align middle. So now what has happened is it's perfectly lined up. So I selected both the shapes. I went to align, clicked align center, then I'll click the align middle, and now the shapes are perfectly aligned with each other. Maybe I'll click on the middle shape again, the circle, and maybe I'll make it a slightly different color. I don't know, brighter colors maybe a lighter blue. You can pick any color you like, right? Maybe I'll just select one of the ready-made effects, something like this, right? So now I have a circle on top of a star shape, right? Now maybe I want to add some text to this. I'm going to click edit text, and maybe I'm going to add some text to this. In this case, I'll add the name of my institution. So I'll say Jawaharlal Institute of Medical Education and Research. So this looks okay so far. I mean, nothing spectacular. I'm going to make this text dark colored so you can see better. I'm making it blue color. And maybe I'll increase the font size a little. So this looks okay, but nothing spectacular. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this text, or you can just click on the shape also. You don't need to select the text. Go to shape format. So far we saw how to format shapes. So there is the shape fill where you can change the fill color. There is the shape outline where you can change the outlines. We saw some dotted lines. We saw how to change the weight. There are more options there that you can work with. You can play with it later. But also to the right of it, if you look here, there are a lot of word styles, word art styles. So there is something that to change the text fill here. You can change the text outline. But the third one is what we are interested in. It says text effects. And if I click on text effects under shape format tab, text effects, the last command on it says transform. And under transform, I can make it, I'll choose circle. So when I chose circle, what happened is the text got arranged in a circle shape, right? Right. If I don't like the where the circle is looking, I can just rotate the circle. So if I go to this handle on top, I can rotate the circle. Maybe I'll rotate it 90 degrees and leave it like this. So now this looks better than what it looked like initially. Of course, I can then change the font size and all that to make it fit the circle if I want. So maybe I'll choose 23 here, so that it kind of fits the circle perfectly, right? And now I can, of course, insert a third shape also. I'm going to I'll insert a picture. Maybe I'll insert the Jipmer logo.
Nishan, can you repeat that part? How to make it circle, the writings text, how to make it circle thing?
Yeah, I can repeat it. So I'll repeat the whole thing. So I'm going to move this to the side. So what you do is you select the shape, you select the circle, this circle, right? So you either select the circle or you select the whole text inside it. Go to
I
shape
just want
format.
to see the text from straight to round. That's the thing.
Yeah, go to shape format.
Yeah.
Under shape format, there are two boxes here. One says shape styles, one says word art styles.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Under word art styles, there are these three buttons. The last command says text effects.
Okay.
You click on text effects, transform, and then you select whichever you want.
Perfect.
So I
Great.
selected
Thanks.
circle. I selected circle, and then you can adjust the font size to make sure it fits correctly. So I'm going to put this back. I have put the Jipmer logo also on the center. So you could easily make something like this using PowerPoint. And of course, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to draw a rectangle around it. So I have selected the star, I have selected the circle with the text in it, and I have selected the Jipmer logo, all three. And I'm going to right click and say group and group again, right? So what I have done now is I have made all these three into one group. So when I move it, the whole group will move together. If I resize it, the whole group will get resized together, right? So only thing is the font size won't change. So if I want to make it bigger, for example, I can make it bigger, but the font size still remains the same. That is very easy to fix. You can go change the font size. You can make it bigger until it fits correctly, right? So this I can make bigger or smaller. And this is a vector graphic. If I zoom in, one thing you can see is the shape itself is very sharp, but the image I inserted in the center is not sharp because it is a raster graphic. The shape is vector graphic and it stays very sharp. So if you put this on a poster and blow it up, I should make sure that the image I have added to the center is of high quality. Otherwise, it will look very pixelated. But the other shape, the logo I have made in PowerPoint, the shapes I have added in PowerPoint, it doesn't matter if you're printing it in a 4:3 poster size or 10:10 poster size or 50:50 poster size, it will stay sharp. So when you make PowerPoints, when you make posters in PowerPoint, you only need to worry about the pictures you have added, the photographs you have added. All the other shapes you have made, the fonts you have made will stay very sharp irrespective of how big you are going to make it. Okay, is that clear now, Murki?
So suppose I want to make one of these as circle, I want another text in the center as vertical, as horizontal.
Yeah, you can just add a text box on top of this, a transparent text box. So if I go to insert shapes, there is also a text box, or you know where to find a text box, there is a separate text box. So I can just draw a text box on top of this, let's say, and let's say I have some other text in it. So let me delete the center image so you can see clearly. So in this text, maybe I have some other text. So let's say Jipmer. Right, in this text box I have some other text and I go to I can align it in the center, I can make it bigger, and I can select this text box along with the other shapes and make sure it's aligned correctly. I go again, do the align center, align middle. Is this what you had in mind, Murki?
Yes.
Yeah, and now you can rotate it, you can make it vertical, horizontal, whatever. I mean, sorry, just the text box. I'll select the text box and I can rotate it whichever way I want, right? And you can play with it. So basically just a transparent text box on top of the background image. And you can group everything together also if you want, like including the text box, you can group it together. So then now the whole thing will move together, right? When I move it, the whole thing will move together. And if you want to see how the grouping is done, under shape format, there is an option called selection pane. If you go to selection pane, what you can see is the first group was made of the star and the oval. I grouped them together. And then that group, I have grouped with the text box. So you can see that here, and you can change it individually also if you like. Like for example, if I click on oval 2, that is the circle in the center, the oval alone is selected now, and I can change the color of that without changing the color of the surrounding things, right? Because they are grouped together. If I just click on the shape and change the color, everything will change color. But if I just want to add, say, color to the text box, I can click on the text box in the selection pane and change the color of the text box alone. I wouldn't do that in this case, but I'm just saying that this is how I do it, right? Of course, I can manipulate it further, but let's leave it at that. Does that answer your question, Murki?
Yes, Nishat.
Okay, so what we have seen here is that you can add different shapes, you can layer them on top of each other, you can manipulate the text inside the shapes, and you can resize them together if you have grouped them, and you can move them together if you have grouped them. Again, we'll need to spend some time on it and use our imagination if you want to make it perfect. But I can show you a quick example that we have done earlier for, I think, maybe I'll skip it because sharing other software seems to be a little difficult here. It's freezing up the screen, but we leave it for later. But you can work with this later and try to make your own shapes. Now another thing that we showed was the lipid bilayer. Now this looks more complicated, but it's actually quite simple, and we'll try to quickly make it so that I can demonstrate how simple this can be, and I can also show you some of the tools that make graphics creation much easier. So I'm going to go to Insert, Shapes, pick a circle. I'll draw a circle here, right? So this looks like a regular circle. I'll just give it some ready-made color. So this color, right? Maybe make it a little smaller. I think you can still see it. Now under shape, there is another shape here. If I go to or insert shapes, if I go to shapes, there is something called a curve. So under shapes, this comes under lines. There is an option called a curve. This is very useful. So if I click on curve, I'll magnify this so you can see better. What curve does is, wherever I click, it adds a curve. So if I'm going to click and drag from the first, I'm going to click and drag, then click, 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 and so on, right? So I'll do that again in case you didn't follow that. I'll go to Insert, Shapes, pick a curve, what is called a curve, then click wherever I want and drag, and then click, 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 right? So I'm trying to make a hydrophilic chain here. I know it's not very great, but for a 2-minute thing, I think this looks okay. At the end, if I double click, it stops drawing the shape. So what I have now is a line. Now I have drawn only one line, but what I can do is I'll do Control D to duplicate it. What I can do is, if I go to shape format, rotate, I can flip this horizontally. That means I can get a mirror image of this. Now I'll just put the mirror image here, right? So it looks like you don't have to make it a mirror image. You can also go to shape format, rotate, and flip it vertically also. So it actually looks slightly different from the one on the other side. So now I have actually made it a mirror image and flipped it vertically. So it looks slightly different from the one on the other side, right? Okay, I'll make sure the lines are somewhat close to this circle for now, right? You can make individual lines like this, a few lines at least, and then make them flip horizontally and vertically to make them look different. But we won't spend too much time on it. I'm just going to right click on all three and group them together. So now I have grouped them together. I can resize them very easily, right? And of course, I showed you already that if you control drag, you can control shift drag, you can duplicate and move them along a straight line. So I'm just going to do that. I'm not worried that they don't look evenly spaced out.
Nishad, where was the mirror image?
So, okay, I'll go back. So I'll delete this line. I'll duplicate the first line, Control D to duplicate. If I go to shape format, rotate, there is an option to flip vertical and flip horizontal. Flip horizontal means mirror image. Flip vertical means, turning it upside down. So in this case, I have done both. So that it's, did you get that, Murki?
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to go back to what we were doing. So we resized it and I did Control Shift to drag it out. Sorry. I'll select the whole group, Control Shift to drag it out. Actually, I can even select 5 of these and drag them out together so that it saves me a lot of time. And now I'm going to select all of them and go to say shape format, align, and say distribute horizontally. So what it does is it distributes it evenly. I think there is a little too much space between the shapes here, but you get the idea, right? So maybe I'll make them come a little closer and then do the shape format, align, distribute horizontally so that they are evenly spaced. Okay, I think that's enough shapes for now. And all I need to do is I can of course group them together, select all of them, group and group, and then duplicate it. So I'm doing Control Shift, drag to duplicate it, and then just make a mirror image. So like I said, shape format, rotate, and flip vertically. So now I have a lipid bilayer, and all it takes is about 5 minutes maybe, max. Murki, do you want me to do this again?
Understandable.
Yeah. So I think if you spend a little more time, of course, in this lipid bilayer, I think I have made a few lines, not just one line. I think I have made 2 lines, and by flipping them horizontal and vertical, I have made them look a little different from each other. But what about this receptor? This receptor is not a shape that you can insert. It's a hand-drawn shape. So if we go back, what we'll do is we can make a receptor. I'm just going to select a few of these molecules. Maybe I'll just ungroup them. Ungroup them. I'm going to delete a couple of these shapes. 1, 2, 3 shapes. Maybe just 2 shapes. I'll delete 2 of these shapes so that there is some space for our receptor. I'll zoom in so you can see better. Right, so this is where our receptor is going to go. Again, I'm going to go to insert shapes. I'm going to press, actually I'm going to pick the same thing, curve, right? So curve is very useful. So I'm going to make the receptor here. So I drag, then click, 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 click. So wherever I click, it inserts a curve, right? So you can spend more time on it and make a more beautiful looking receptor. But for the time being, I'll just make something like this. Right? And when I reach the end, it shows me a fill shape. If I click on it, at that time, it makes it a filled curve. So I'm going to go to shape format. Maybe I'll change the color a little. Okay, let's have an orange receptor. Let's make it a little colorful. Right? Now what I want is something that fits here, maybe something like a cytokine. Again, I'm going to go to shape format. I'll pick the curve itself. I'll magnify this. so that I can see it clearly. So to magnify, like I said, you can use your control button while using the scroll button on your mouse. You press the control button and use the scroll button on your mouse, or you can use your trackpad, or in my case, I have a touchscreen laptop, so I can even use that. So I'm going to draw it again, draw something like a cytokine maybe that. So I'm going to, you can spend some time to make this more beautiful, but I'm going to just make a very basic thing.
Instead of this, can we make a shape and then cut out of it and then color it the same?
Yeah, you can do that also, Murki.
Yeah.
That is also possible. So you can make something like this, or if you want something really simple, you don't want this fancy stuff, I'll show you a very easy shortcut. This is only available in PowerPoint, and unfortunately, again, it's not available in Mac. So if I go to insert shapes, let's say I insert a rectangle, something like this. Let's say this is my receptor, and I want a cytokine. So I'm going to go to insert shapes. Maybe my cytokine is star shaped. So I'll make a star like this, and I'll make it a different color so it stands out. Or maybe I'll leave it at the same color, as the same color right now. I'll overlap it slightly. Now what I have to do is I select both the shapes using the control button. In Office for Windows, in PowerPoint for Windows, if you go to shape format, there is an option here that says merge shapes. If you go to merge shapes and select one of these, you can see what is happening. If I select union, it combines the shapes, it merges the shapes. If I say combine, it splits it. If I say fragment, it will split it into 3 shapes. If I say intersect, it will leave only the intersection. And if I say subtract, it will subtract one shape from the other. So I'm going to use fragment here. So I have fragmented it. Now the 2 shapes have become 3 shapes. If I drag this away, I can delete it. And I can drag away the second shape also, right? So then I can always animate it so that these come together. In my case, I'm using Office 365. So there is a transition called morph, which is available only in Office 2019 or Office 365, in which I can just duplicate the slide. So I'm right-clicking, duplicating the slide. In the duplicate slide, I'll bring them together. And in transition, I select morph, right? So what happens if I project the slide is, I'll project it. Oh, sorry. What happens if I project is, it looks like an animation. So you can easily quickly make something like this in PowerPoint. Is that clear? I'll do it once again. So what I did is, I'll delete these slides. Shall I do that once again, Murki?
Yes, once more.
Yeah, it doesn't work unfortunately in Mac right now. Maybe it will come later. So if you go to insert shapes, you insert a shape. In this case, maybe I'll make it a rounded rectangle or something. You insert some shape, which is your receptor. Actually, it doesn't just work for receptors, it works for a lot of other things also, many animations. Then I'll insert another shape. In this case, maybe I'll pick a 10-point star. So this is the star I'm going to use. This is my cytokine. I overlap them slightly, select both, and go to shape format, merge shapes, and fragment. Fragment means it is now cut it. It's like Venn diagrams. It has cut it into 3 different pieces. So this is one piece, this is a second piece, and this is a third piece. I can actually, you know, go back and merge these back together. These two, shape format, merge shapes, union. So now this shape is back, but this shape has a star shape deficit in it. In Office 29, if you have Office 29 or Office 365, there is a transition called morph which is available, which makes animation much easier. In that, all you have to do is right click the slide, duplicate it. In the second slide, you bring this together wherever, in whatever position you want it, you bring it back, right? And then say the transition should be morph. So what it does is this. So I'll project it so you can see it. So in the first shape, it is like this. First slide, it is like this. In the second slide, they come together. So this is called a morph transition that is only available in 2019 or Office 365, Office 2019 or Office 365. But you don't have to. Sorry?
Mac में चल रहा है ये. Mac में चल रहा है.
Oh, okay, great. That is awesome then. So if you can do it in Mac, maybe that's good then. But of course, you can make your custom shape also, like I was saying. So this kind of illustration, you can see how easy it is to make. It is very easy to, yeah, sorry.
Mrs. Can you hear me? That one more transition is there in the morph. Can you finish that one? That advanced morph or custom morph transition. You want to cover that one also?
No, I'm not talking about animation at all. I just happened to accidentally show this. Sorry.
Okay.
Animations will be a whole different class.
No problem. I think this is more important for compared.
Tomorrow. Animation.
But we have
yeah, well, later. So anyway, this is how you can make a fairly good illustration with very little effort. And you can work on this a little bit more. Like, for example, I'll just show you what you can do with this particular receptor shape. So I'll magnify it so you can see better. If I go under shape format, there are a lot of options to manipulate this shape. But I'll just use the side tab so you can see this better. So this is right now filled in a solid color. So I can select the color and change the color. This is very simple. I have made it blue now or some other color. But it doesn't have to be a solid fill. You can fill it with a gradient. You can pick a ready-made gradient, for example, to make it look more three-dimensional. Or if you don't like the colors in the gradient, you can change the colors. So let's say I want this in shades of gray. What I'm going to do is select the gradient stops and change the color of the gradient. So I'm going to click on the first gradient stop, make it a light gray, maybe. The second one, I'll make it a darker gray. The third one, maybe I'll make it even black or very dark gray. So now it is a differently colored gradient. Right? From gray to black. Or I can fill it with a pattern. And in the pattern, I can select, oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Or I can fill it with a pattern. You can pick any pattern you like, which seems appropriate for the situation. And you can change the pattern colors also. You can change the foreground color. For example, if I want orange, I can make it orange. And the background color, if I want it black, I can make it black, and so on, right? You can experiment with this and decide what color you want. But yeah, hopefully nothing too terrible like this. Yeah, so you can fill it with a pattern, you can fill it with a solid color, you can fill it with a gradient. This applies to the whole PowerPoint slide also. You can make slide backgrounds like this. You can fill slide backgrounds with a solid color or gradients or patterns. Maybe I'll show you one of the slide backgrounds. We have a few minutes left. we can show that also. So, or you can always fill it with a picture also. So I wouldn't do that for something like this, but I think in the whale that I showed, it was filled with a picture. So you can insert a picture from a file. Let's see what we have. So if I want to insert a picture as the background, you can in this, I don't think that's the right picture for it. It's a pea flower from my garden, but you know, you can insert a picture as a background if you like, that kind of thing, right? But that is entirely up to you, how you want to customize it, and it depends on the kind of shape you are creating. You can customize the background very well. One of the slides in the PowerPoint presentation that you have is actually the this particular slide of the wandering violin mantis. It's not very uncommon in Pondi. And if you look at the background, it's a pattern background. And there is something here on highlight like thing on the corner, which is actually a separate rectangle. So if I move this, you can see it's just a gray rectangle, which is actually going from gray on top to almost transparent at the bottom. That is a gradient. And there is a pattern background to the slide. I'll temporarily just move this out, and let's look at the slide background. So the slide background, if I go to design, format background, again the same options are available. You can make it a solid fill, like a blue background. You can make it a gradient fill like this. You can select a ready-made gradient, or you can make it a custom gradient like we said. And you can select the kind of gradient you want, whether you want a linear gradient, a radial gradient, and all that. But I will let you play with it. You can use a picture as a background, of course, or you can use a pattern like this. So the pattern, what pattern you use is entirely up to you. But there are various patterns available. So, and you can select the foreground color and the background color, right? So something like this. And on top of that, I have put in another shape, and that shape is filled with a gradient. I have filled that gradient from gray to dark gray to light gray, and I have made it semi-transparent. There is an option here where I'm pointing to adjust the transparency. So I have just made it semi-transparent so that it just looks like a highlight in the background. Let me do Control Z to go back to what it looked like. So this, I think, was the original. So this was the original. What I have done is I have made a pattern background, and I have added another rectangle on top to make it look like a highlight. So these things that I showed are not really limited to shapes. You can use it to make slide backgrounds or custom slide backgrounds. And if I click apply to all, it will apply to all the slides. But anyway, making PowerPoint presentations is, like I said, a different class, and animations and all that. My focus today was only to talk a little bit about graphics. So we, I think to summarize, we saw how to make flow. We saw some shortcuts about how to manipulate shapes, how to duplicate them, move them, resize them, and all that. One or two of the shortcuts I think we haven't covered, but you can look at it later. We saw how to make flowcharts easily, how to make the arrows connect, how to make sure the boxes are aligned, how to make sure the formatting is uniform across boxes. We, I think, spent a little bit of time on image manipulation, shadow, cropping, recoloring, and all that. A tiny bit of time on three-dimensional effects also. Then we talked about grouping shapes, aligning shapes, adding text in different formats, and so on. We didn't do the dog thing. The dog takes about 6 to 8 hours, by the way, in case somebody is trying to make it. So it's a 6-hour dog. You can make a 12-hour dog, which looks more beautiful if you want. This illustration, of course, it took many hours, but I'm going to take this apart a little for you so you can see that each shape in this is an individual shape. I'm going to break this down into pieces. But of course, this is in your slide, so you can do this yourself. So each shape in this is a different shape, right? So they are all just joined together. Actually, this is just the water level. It's just a text box, I think. This is just a text box with underscores in it. The bubbles are all individual shapes, right? So if you play with it, if you take it apart, you can see that these are all individual shapes, which are just put together for the slides. So I think we have some time for questions. Any questions, Murki? Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, good morning and thank you so much. Neeraj from Jodhpur. I just want to know what is the alternative
Hi,
of this
Neeraj.
option morph in the transition if you don't have the 2019 version or 365 version.
I can't hear you clearly.
I'm asking that what is the alternative of the option morph under the transition if you don't have this word 2019 or 365? Do we have some alternative?
Yeah, if you don't have, yeah, there is an alternative. So morph actually comes under transition. It's not, it doesn't come under animation, although it looks animated. The advantage of morph is that it makes it very easy to make it look like an animation. You don't really need to put much manual effort into it. You just need to duplicate the slide and move things around in the slide or resize things on the slide, and it will look like an animation. The disadvantage is, of course, it's only available in Office 2019 and Office 365. If you have an older version, one thing you can do is make a custom animation. So for that, you will need to actually know a little bit about animation. So you can move things along specified paths. So it is possible in under animation to move things along custom paths. So if you do one of that, it is still possible. So there are motion paths available for animation. So you can still make things move, right? So if you want to move something right, for example, something like this, right? So did you see that?
Yeah, got it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think animation can be used there. Yeah.
Yeah, you can use animation using a motion path. So it's up to you what motion path you use, something like diagonal left or something like that in the older version.
Agreed. I've used this option like very occasionally, but I think that serves the purpose.
Yeah, but of course, transition is more powerful in the sense that let's say I have morph also works for other things. For example, if I duplicate this slide, and on the second slide, I have made the circle bigger and moved it to the side. So if I apply a morph transition, what it does is this. Can you see that?
Very graceful.
Yeah, it looks very nice. And I actually used the morph transition while I was presenting for many of the shapes. Like, for example, all these are not animations. These were all done using morph. So this, for example, was a morph transition. It's not an animation. And even the next thing, the configurational change, was actually a morph transition. So you cannot do this kind of configurational change, for example, using animation. It only works with morph. So like I was telling Murki earlier, Bill Gates really is desperate for your money. So he wants you to upgrade. Any other questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very useful, very informative. I think we have learned the science now. For getting into practice, we need to learn this art by practicing and then demonstrating.
Yeah, it takes some work. I agree.
Nisha, first time you made that Microsoft is much powerful than Apple. I'm happy with it. Every time we feel that whenever the Mac people will come, we are depressed at this thing. But now I feel interesting.
Hey, Murki is listening. Mac users are listening.
Maybe they will come out with a new version, but I think till now this is good. Okay.
Yeah, for now it is. I mean, they roll out newer features on Windows before they do on Mac. So
Yeah. Which version you are now using there?
I'm using Office 365.
365. Because one feature I felt was like when I'm clicking the shape, it is showing just format to me, but in your screen it is showing shape format, picture format, or this thing.
Yeah,
Is it
yeah,
anything
but
different?
yeah, is yours Office 365 or an older version? In some older versions, it just shows as format instead of shape format.
No, it's 365 only.
Okay,
Nishant.
I don't know that. Yeah.
No, we have bought Microsoft Office and as a this thing and put it on our Macs. So that should work as PowerPoint only, no?
Yeah, it is
Because-
PowerPoint, but the PowerPoint for Mac is different, ma'am. It's made differently.
No, I agree. Those Google slides, you have a lot of options, but we have bought Microsoft Office and installed it on our Macs.
Yeah, but you probably brought Microsoft